Confidence in Jeff Sessions. The lead starts right now. Breaking news as some Republicans suggest it is okay for President Trump to fire his attorney general. The Senate Majority Leader jumps in front of the bus. What he said in moments. A few months ago, President Trump declared North Korea no longer a nuclear threat. Now it appears the nuclear talks may fall apart. Who saw this coming? Plus, today voters in Florida head to the polls while the green blob, sick, smelly slime, is taking over their waters, as if Florida politics could get any more murky. Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jim Sciutto, in again today for Jake Tapper, and we begin with the politics lead, the uncertain future of Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who once warned there would be, quote, holy hell to pay if President Trump fired Sessions, now says that the relationship between the two men is, quote, beyond repair, suggesting the Attorney General be replaced after the midterm elections. Graham telling CNN this just minutes ago.
Here's what I know, that Trump doesn't like him and that this relationship is soured, and I'm not blaming Jeff. It can't go on like this. I mean, it's either got to get better. It's just not good for the country.
Sessions has been the very public target of the president's ire, essentially since Sessions recused himself from all Russia-related matters last year. President Trump repeatedly insulting Sessions on Twitter over the Russia investigation, with the Attorney General firing back, quote, the actions of the Department of Justice will not be improperly influenced by political considerations. CNN's Phil Mattingly is on Capitol Hill for us today. Phil, despite these increased calls from Republicans that the new Attorney General might be replaced, minutes ago the Senate Majority Leader seemed to try to get in the way of that. What did he have to say?
Yeah, Jim, whether it was jumping in front of a bus or slamming on the brakes, the Majority Leader, despite those rumblings you mentioned from the rank and file inside of his conference, making clear the Attorney General should go nowhere. Take a listen.
There seems to be renewed interest, including by some members of your conference, in the job that Attorney General Sessions is doing. Does he still have your confidence? Do you still think he's doing a good job in that role?
Yeah, I have total confidence in the Attorney General. I think he ought to stay exactly where he is.
Now, Jim, let me give you the behind the scenes of that based on aides that I've been talking to over the course of the last couple of days. There are really two issues here, the political and the procedural. On the former, there is a recognition inside Republican leadership that political fallout of a firing or removal of Attorney Jeff Sessions would be nightmarish, as one aide put it to me, leading up into the midterm elections. They don't want any part of that because of the connection to Jeff Sessions' recusal from the Russia investigation. The other is procedural. The idea that they could get a new Attorney General confirmed, that even they could get every Republican to support any nominee, no matter how good the nominee was. Right now, leadership doesn't think that's available, and because of that, the leader and most of his team saying, hey, leave this alone, Mr. President.
Phil, we understand that a source is telling CNN that waning support among some Senate colleagues for Sessions isn't entirely due just to the tension with the president. What's behind it then?
Yeah, I think this is a really important point. People think it's about the president's relationship. Obviously, that's what Senator Graham was referring to, or if this is about the Mueller investigation. What we are being told is this has far more to do with other policies, most notably criminal justice reform, where Attorney General Sessions has run crosswise with Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley, also Lindsey Graham, very key on criminal justice reform, on things like immigration, on things like even marijuana policy. Where Attorney General Sessions stands on the policy issues is in a very different place for some very key senators up here when it comes to those issues. I think one of the key points here is not necessarily that those senators are going to leave him behind. They recognize the potential fallout here, but instead it's that they're not necessarily rushing to his defense publicly like they have in past months. That said, I'm told from several sources, senators have been making calls to the Attorney General over the course of the last couple of days, letting him know they still have his support. They just like him maybe to get more in line with them on some policy issues, Jim.
Pressure, political pressure. Phil Mattingly up on the Hill, thanks very much. Bill Kristol, it has been his GOP, well, really his Senate colleagues' support that has shored up Jeff Sessions in the face of these kind of relentless attacks from the president. If that is waning, among some of them at least, is he in danger today?
I mean, I still think it would be politically suicidal for Trump to fire Sessions, which that's, unless Rosenstein just becomes Attorney General, which doesn't really do Trump much good on that. I don't buy for a second. I'm sure they've got policy issues with Sessions. I don't think that has anything to do with this. And incidentally, Lindsey Graham's attacks, they began, if I'm not mistaken, shortly after he played golf with Donald Trump. Graham is speaking for Trump. This is not Lindsey Graham changing his mind about Jeff Sessions. Lindsey Graham, in a very unfortunate way, in my opinion, has decided to carry water for Trump for whatever reason. He thinks it's the right thing to do. He himself wouldn't mind being in the Trump cabinet. Who knows what? So this is part of the Trump assault on Sessions. I don't think people should kid themselves at all that, oh, a lot of Republican senators independently have decided that suddenly their former colleague Jeff Sessions shouldn't be there. And McConnell, I think, knows what's going on. And McConnell thinks it would be disastrous for Trump to fire Sessions, and that's why he stepped up.
And that was a pretty clear signal, was it not, from Mitch McConnell there? Because he has, you know, bided his time occasionally on making public statements like that.
McConnell's very deliberate. He's very careful about how he speaks. He's not somebody to talk about having full confidence in somebody if he doesn't actually feel that way. Mitch McConnell does not want any upheaval in the Mueller probe before the November elections at the very least. And I think we need to understand when we look at candidates, we look at senators, like Lindsey Graham and some others, some of them are going to have Republican primaries coming up in 2020. And especially in a state like South Carolina, where the president's going to have a lot of loyal support among the Republican base, it could be that Lindsey Graham is trying to make sure he's on the right side of the Republican primary electorate. And how do you do that? By making sure that you send signals that you are supportive of where the president is as this Mueller investigation proceeds, because if this thing drips into next year, you're then in the new election cycle, and all of a sudden this becomes an issue in a Republican primary where people start to say to people like Lindsey Graham voters, hey, are you with the president on this, or are you with Mueller?
Okay, I just have to say that that is pathetic, and just in the week after John McCain's, in the past this week that we had John McCain pass, we have Lindsey Graham, of all people, saying, basically, I'm going to put rule of law and all the principles of democracy over here because I'm worried about a primary in 2020. I mean, let's just step back and recognize what is happening is the president is attacking his own attorney general because he does not like an investigation of himself. It's just another indication of action of a guilty person. And the fact that Republicans like Lindsey Graham are running cover for him is outrageous and really worthy of no respect from the American people or their fellow senators.
Let's have a listen, in fairness, to what Lindsey Graham said exactly regarding the position of Attorney General.
Dysfunctional. I mean, I do not like Jeff Sessions by any stretch of the imagination, but it is only dysfunctional because Jeff Sessions is allowing an investigation of the president, as is his duty to the country.
Do you, Simone, you heard Lindsey Graham there trying to thread a very tight needle and saying,
needle
okay,
was real tight, Jim.
Let's
real
get someone
tight, okay?
who has a relationship with the president, therefore has his confidence, but, and he said it specifically there, will also protect Bob Mueller. Is there such a person?
I mean, look, if I remember correctly, Jeff Sessions at one point in time was the president's biggest cheerleader.
Right. The first in the Senate to endorse him.
He was the first in the Senate to endorse him. Donald Trump was more than happy to prop him up as the Attorney General pick, and many of the senators who are now saying they have an issue with his policy were more than happy to vote for him. And so my question to Senator Graham would be, what constitutes the confidence of the president? Yeah. Not recusing yourself from the Russia investigation, saying you're going to fire Bob Mueller, using bully pulpit and mob-style tactics to shut down an investigation potentially of the president and his allies? I don't know. The American people don't know, but this is just crazy.
The confidence of the president, let's admit, is a capricious sort of measure of someone's security.
But the particular thing that you touched on that the president's upset about is that Sessions recused himself, which has left a slightly bizarre situation where the deputy attorney general is in charge of the Russia probe, and Rosenstein has run it extremely responsibly, in my view, but also protected Mueller, protected the Southern District of New York. He's got a pretty aggressive investigation going there. If Sessions were to leave, and let's say they brought in a wonderful person, well respected, and if the Senate would then confirm that person is not recused. That person's then in charge of supervising the Mueller probe, the Southern District of New York, and so forth. That's why Trump has a great interest in removing Sessions. And that's why, even though one can have whatever views one wants about Jeff Sessions as Attorney General, I think people would see the removal of Sessions as really an attempt to go after the Mueller investigation.
And that's why I think it would be a big mistake, actually, for President Trump. So if he is innocent in this investigation into possible collusion with Russia in the 2016 election. As he approaches 2020, and remember, the 2020 Trump re-election starts the day, November 7th, the day after the midterm elections. It is off and running. And if he is innocent in this probe, and if the report that Mueller is going to release is ultimately going to, in a sense, exonerate the president by not implicating him and suggesting he's in legal peril, then the worst thing he could do would be to cause this upheaval by removing Jeff Sessions and creating this impression that he's afraid of what Mueller is going to do. And so I think if you're a Republican who wants Trump reelected, the best thing you could do is force him to keep Jeff Sessions exactly where he is and let this thing play out.
But I just don't understand. I mean, all of that logic follows, and yet he's going after Jeff Sessions. So why doesn't that indicate to you that he's guilty?
Well, I didn't say it doesn't indicate to me that he's guilty or not guilty, but one thing we know about Trump is he hates the idea that people are targeting him. He finds the idea that he is being treated unfairly the same way my 6-year-old looks at the issue of fairness.
Oh, Lord.
He is completely, feels completely targeted by it, and he expected everybody in his administration, in the White House at the very least, to be like employees at Trump Tower. Now, look, we're versed in government. We know that that's not the way it works, but I think that that's how the president approached it. And I think that while he could be guilty, the point is, it could just simply bother him that people aren't doing what he wants.
Jim, this exact conversation...
Just ask some of my colleagues in the media.
This exact conversation is why so many members, all of the Democratic members of the Senate Judiciary Committee have come out against Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court Justice nomination to the Supreme Court. This exact conversation. The president can't even be trusted to credibly conduct business with his attorney general. The president is for all we know, is thinking about firing it. Like they're floating things in the press, and this is why so many people are saying Donald Trump. Many people are saying Donald Trump shouldn't still be president. I'm not saying that. I'm just telling you what the people are saying, Jim. But not only should he not still be president, but he definitely shouldn't be able to appoint a Supreme Court justice.
We just have some. I should mention we have some news coming into CNN now regarding this story. A source close to the Attorney General tells my colleague Laura Jarrett that Sessions spoke with McConnell, of course, the Senate Majority Leader, last week, and that he has received a number of calls of support behind the scenes from his former colleagues in the Senate amid this public battle with the president. So some more words of support coming in for Sessions there, as others seem to be abandoning him. We're going to have a lot more to discuss going forward, including, did Rudy Giuliani reveal the possible strategy behind the president